Hey guys, back. We're going to go ahead and go through our next macronutrient, which is protein. So our objective in this lesson is going to be to understand basically the two different types of proteins and kind of what they do for our bodies. So um, we'll go ahead and get started. So protein's main function is to rebuild cells in the body. So it says there on your screen, it's a building block nutrient. So it is essentially the foundation that you need to have for your body. It's extremely important. We mentioned that carbohydrates are needed for energy. Well, we can't use that energy without having the ability to repair our body and to continually adapt to our surroundings. So the unique thing about our body is it has this adaptability to continually try to be prepared for the situations that we're in. So, for example, protein, a lot of times people think of it as a strength thing, and it's something that athletes take in excess of to gain muscle. And the real science behind that is that it's repairing things. So, anytime your muscles are broken down, beaten, your hair is cut, your fingernails are short, or the skin, there's some problems with an injury of some kind. But the protein is actually the process of rebuilding it. So when the reason that we think of this a lot in weights is because when you actually exercise, you're actually tearing the muscle fibers down, and the body is then put through stress, and it's basically tricking the body into thinking we need to gain more muscle, and I need more repair back more so that I can handle what the body is being tried to put through. So that's really the kind of basis behind working out in general, and then also what the benefit of protein in our diet is. So with that in mind, 10 to 35% of our diet should consist of protein, so a lot less than the carbohydrates. And this really depends on the activity level and things like that, based off of and essentially also your goal. So if your goal is not to gain muscle mass, you're probably going to be closer down towards the 10. If you have a goal of gaining muscle mass, it's probably closer to that 35%. As you see down there at the bottom, 1 gram is equal to 4 calories. It's the exact same as it is in carbohydrates. So you'll see in a little bit that fat is quite different, but protein and carbohydrates are 4 calories per gram. Okay, so now we are going to talk about the two different types of protein. They are complete and incomplete, and the reason that that is important is it has to do with amino acids. Your body needs 20 different amino acids to continually make the protein in our body to help rebuild the cells. Our body already makes 11 of them, meaning that there are 9 amino acids needed to make a protein that is going to build cells. So complete proteins have all 9 of those amino acids. And those are essentially animal meat. So anything that comes from an animal is going to be a complete protein. Anything that does not come from an animal that is a protein source is going to be incomplete. Now you might ask, well, how does a vegetarian get complete proteins if they don't eat meat? Well, great question. So the incomplete sources of protein have some of the amino acids, and some combination of those incompletes can actually make a complete protein. Now, this is a little bit more challenging, and because of that challenge, the number of combinations and the number of protein molecules that are actually made is going to be less than someone who's consuming a lot of protein that is from complete animal meat sources. Therefore, that's why you would also probably commonly associate most vegetarians as thinner people, or people who don't weigh very much, not because that's necessarily inherently the diet, but just simply because it's more difficult and more challenging to maintain a higher weight or a muscular weight at that level. That doesn't mean that it's not possible, it's just more challenging. So you see there in the middle how many grams approximately that you would need to have, and that really is, again, dependent upon the individual plus the goals. And then down there in the middle, there is a common misnomer that the more protein that you take, the more muscle you have. Well, as you see down there in our notes, the more protein that you have that you don't need, so if protein is exceeding what the caloric need that you need, it's going to get stored as fat. So that's something to always keep in mind when consuming protein. Just in general, as a society, we actually consume more protein than we actually need, and so that's something that we should always keep in mind when it comes to our diet. So here in this slide, I've already kind of mentioned some of those things, but again, there it is written down if you want to stop and take any notes that you need to. So here's some just examples of complete proteins. I didn't mention previously protein powder, so some different examples there. You'll notice that I do have a note that pea protein is the most natural and easier on your stomach of all those protein powders. So I actually know that from personal experience. And pea protein actually is labeled vegan protein, so it's another great way for vegetarians to get that complete protein source if they choose. There's actually, I don't know if anybody in here is even alive, but when Tony Gonzalez was a tight end for the Kansas City Chiefs, but he is a vegetarian. He's a very large man at 6'6", 6'7", and probably weighs in the neighborhood of 275, 280 pounds. And he is a vegetarian and was able to maintain that throughout his playing career. So pretty impressive for him to be able to do that. So why is it important to have complete proteins over incomplete? Kind of mentioned before, but there's a slide that kind of talks about this. But body's going to take longer to repair. You could experience muscle atrophy or muscle loss if you're not getting the kind of complete proteins that you need. In Classroom, I have an article if you want to, again, take a look at just kind of protein powder and kind of what's going on there. It's really kind of a fad to some extent. Most people don't need protein powder. It's something, again, we can get from our diet. We overconsume, and culturally we have made the the meat the centerpiece of our meals, and usually the largest portion, and so we consume way too much meat just in our diet here in America. And there's a video that I might show that kind of talks about that in general. It's a TED Talk, so hopefully you'll get a chance to see that as well. So there are a couple of other types of vegetarians that are there. So we have octo-vegetarians who actually eat eggs. And there are some who just don't eat any meat whatsoever at all. So just kind of dependent upon that, have a little bit more challenging situation. And then this is not an actual description of what it is. On the right-hand side, let's just say that the 9 amino acids that we need, those meats have all 9. On the left-hand side, this is just made up, but it's just kind of an example of what I was talking about earlier. All right, so that is our slide on protein. So again, we had protein at the top, and then coming down from that, there were 2 different types. There was complete over here on this side, and that's animal meat. And then we had incomplete on this side, and that's grains, vegetables, beans, and nuts. This is just some examples of that. So again, any questions? Feel free to email me.